Hello, I'm coming at you this horrendous day before I head out to college, so you can tell just how much fun I'm having to bring you my September wrap-up. Bit late, maybe even later than I think, depending on when I edit and upload this. But anyway, I've read some books. It wasn't my most successful reading month, but I shall talk to you about them nevertheless. I'll start off by mentioning Into the Crooked Place by Alexandra Christo. I don't remember if I mentioned this in my August wrap-up, because I do believe I started at the end of August. But I love this book very much. I requested an early copy from Hotkey, so thank you very much, Hotkey Books, and this was one of my options in work for our teen book of the month, and it won because it's just that good. It pretty much follows a group of misfits as they're trying to save the world from this magical drug that has been brought to the streets of their city. And it gave me a lot of Six of Crow feels, and I love Six of Crows, so that was fabulous. You follow this guy that's pretty much a crime lord. You follow this girl that's a busker and his childhood best friend, and there's a lot of angst there. You follow a different girl that is his bodyguard of sorts, and also kind of fighting in a ring for fun occasionally. And another girl that I won't say too much about because spoilers, but she was in a relationship with this girl, and she's the best friend of the other one. And there's just so much good banter, and the dynamics between the characters are so well established, and there's just so much angst between all of them, and the world building is really interesting, and the plot is just captivating, and it's super action packed, and it just keeps you guessing, and it keeps you reading on, and it's phenomenal. And the writing style is just really beautiful and flowery, and the characters come alive right off the page. And I love this book with my whole heart, and the ending is very intense, and there are a lot of seeds that have been planted for the next book to, grow. And I'm very excited about that. Maybe one of my most anticipated books. I highly, highly, highly recommend this. I also read everyone's favorite book of the year, Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McWinston, and I loved it. Naturally, this book is set in an alternate world where a woman won the 2016 US election, and her son kind of has a little conflict with the Prince of England at a wedding, and in order to prevent the press from going deep into it, the two pretend to be best friends, except it goes from enemies to best friends to lovers, and it's just chef kiss. It's beautiful. It's so funny. It has emails and texts and whatnot between the characters inserted in the book. It's just so fun, and it's so endearing, and I love Alex and Henry with my whole heart, and it's just a definite, absolute comfort read. Like, you get what you going for, and you know what you're setting yourself up for, and it's just so wholesome and so pure, and it made my little stressed out heart so happy. So I too would highly recommend you read this, like the rest of the internet. It also dives into some deeper stuff, like homophobia and drug abuse. I think Henry's sister had a thing with that, and also US politics, because Alex is a biracial man from Texas who's also, bisexual. So, it's deep, it's good, it's smart, it's poignant, it's everything. I started The Deathless Girls by Karen Millwood Hargrave. This is a YA retelling of The Brides of Dracula. You'd think I would have realized it's set in Romania, wouldn't you? It's so wrong. It's so wrong. It's God bless Hachette kids. They tried, but they could have used a proofreader. The words are wrong. It's like every other character dances with bears, because that's what happens in Romania, obviously. Needless to say, I was not digging it at all. The story itself and the writing and the characters were fine, but everything else was so infuriating that I couldn't justify putting myself through the rest of the book just for that. So do with that what you will. The finished copy of the book is stunning. The cover, the end pages, like, it's a gorgeous object. I just don't necessarily know if I would endorse the story itself. One of my coworkers also made me read Confessions with Blue Horses by Sophia Hardak. I hope that's her name. This is adult fiction. That was a whole thing throughout the month for me. Shockingly enough, it pretty much follows these two siblings who moved from Germany to England, and their mother died, and the sister is kind of trying to go back to Germany to finish what her mother started, because the government had a whole thing with her family back in the day, because, you know, Germany divided the whole thing, and their little brother was taken away, and the mother had been trying to find him for years but wasn't successful. So the girl goes back to Germany, and you kind of switch between their past in Germany back in the day and their experiences then and their struggles, and the present, which is her search. And it's also a lot about art and whatnot, because the mother was an artist and the father was an art historian, and it's very touching. And it's just, it wasn't the best thing I've ever read, but it was also a solid read. So if it sounds like something you'd be interested in, and like the kind of historical fiction you don't get that much of, I would definitely recommend giving it a shot. But yeah, not particularly memorable, but very touching. I also read The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, Volume 1, Squirrel Power. This follows Squirrel Girl when she goes off to college, and it's ridiculous, it's funny, you have some cameos from other well-known Marvel superheroes and villains, and it's just, you know, what you would expect from Squirrel Girl, so I really enjoyed that. I also read one of my favorite books of all year, of all time, Queen of Coin and Whispers by Helen Corcoran. Helen and I used to work together. The book is out from Brian Press in April 2020. It's one of the best books I've ever read, objectively speaking, like my friendship with Helen aside. It is YA fantasy, and it follows the story of two girls, Leah and Xania. Leah is a just got to the throne queen who's trying to put her country back on the right track after her good-for-nothing uncle kind of destroyed it. She is trying to be the queen the country needs, but people are, you know, they're not making it easy for her. And Xania wants to avenge the death of her father, and she kind of becomes Leah's spy master while at it, and it's just, it's incredible. It's really action-packed. You have so many twists and turns and character deaths that I did not see coming. It keeps you guessing, it keeps you engaged, it keeps you on your toes. There's a lot of political intrigue, which I really loved, and I thought it was so well done. The world is so rich in its politics, and I really liked that. The characters are just, they're phenomenal. The writing is beautiful. You have really good, witty, funny banter. The relationship between Leah and Xania is just so wholesome and so beautiful, and I love them. And there is some flirting through books, which is just really nicely done and a really nice addition. And I cannot wait for everyone to read this book, because I feel like it could appeal to so many different kinds of people. So there's that, you know, the one life in that month. On my adult fiction binge, I read Ask Again Yes by Mary Beth Keane, and this is a suburban family drama that's not written by Celeste Ng, so I didn't quite enjoy it. I think you start the story in the 80s about these two families. The dads used to work together in the police force, and yeah, it's not particularly memorable. I did care about the story of the kids, but I also wanted to DNF this throughout the whole book. I don't really like the writing style. It uses the whole plot of the hysterical woman to justify the struggles of male characters and stuff. Don't appreciate that. It's not the best. It's not the best. It's not the best, no. I'd say if you want a good suburban drama, read anyone else. It's not the worst thing I've ever read, but it uses a lot of microaggressions. And again, the whole hysterical woman plot is something I really don't enjoy seeing. And it kind of tries to fix that throughout the book. But if that's what you're doing throughout 3/4 of the godforsaken story, I don't appreciate it too much, and I don't think it did too many things too well, and then it tried to do a lot in the last quarter of the book, and it was just a bit of a mess, to be honest. On a much brighter note, though, I read All the Bad Apples by Moira Fowley-Doyle. This was a book club book, and was also one of my most anticipated reads of the year. It follows a girl whose sister goes missing, so she kind of goes on a trip across Ireland trying to look for her sister that everyone thinks is dead, and also try to break a family curse. And you've got banshees, and you've got people holding Ireland accountable for the way it disrespected a lot of people in the past and mistreated them. And it's a lot about that cultural memory kind of thing, and it's so smart and it's so beautifully written. And again, you've got queer girls, and it's beautiful, and you've got supportive best friends, and you've got the road trip element, and you switch between your present narrative and fragments from the past, because she's trying to piece together the story of her family and the bad apples that came before her, while trying to figure out her own life story. And it's just so beautiful, and it's so Irish, but I feel like there's so much in it that will speak to a lot of people from a lot of different places, and the ideas in it are really touching and necessary, and it's just such a phenomenal book, and I want everyone to read it, and I cannot wait to see Moira this week and tell her how much I love this. I also read The Gospel of Loki by Joanne Harris. This is the Myth Take Reads book for September and October. I will link Myth Take down below. As always, this is pretty much Norse myth told through the perspective of Loki. This was really fun. I think Joanne Harris is really talented when it comes to narrative voice. I thought Loki's voice as a narrator was just really, honestly, authentic, even though how do I know how a god of mischief would speak? But it did feel authentic, and it was so beautifully done, and it was so funny. I will say, it kind of started dragging at some point. It's only 300 pages long, you know, and often I felt like we were losing the narrative thread, and didn't appreciate that. And also, I feel like I would pay this woman to write one well-shaped female character, because I don't know, you could argue it's because of Loki being the character whose eyes you see through that they don't really get, you know, a personality. But also, it's just, I don't like it. It made me uncomfortable, and also I feel like because of who Loki is as god of mischief and chaos incarnate, and, you know, I like the gender fluid representations of Loki best. And I think that he's just such a white man in this book. Like, he finds it more likely that he would want to have sex with a horse than be attracted to an actual man. And it's just, it's not the best to read about. I then read Why You Should Read Children's Books Even Though You Are So Old and Wise by Catherine Rundell. This is a little essay. I think the title tells you quite well what it is about. It's so beautiful. It's so wholesome. I think everyone should read this. My favorite point that she makes in this, though she makes so many good points, is that kids lit is about escapism and findism, and that idea of findism and finding yourself and identifying yourself with someone in that book is just so beautiful. And I love this so much. In case you don't know, Catherine Rundell is like a best-selling kids lit author. So she knows what she's talking about, and it's beautiful, and I love this, and I encourage everyone to read it. My friend Helen actually lent me her copy of An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson, and I love this. This is a YA fairy story about a girl who lives in a world where fairies can't practice any form of human craft, but they really love the idea of craft, so they go to humans for that, and she's the most talented portrait artist. and this autumn prince comes to her door and wants his portrait painted, and she kind of falls in love with the idea of him, and she makes the mistake of painting human sorrow in his eyes, because, you know, why wouldn't you romanticize a hot prince from Perry? You know, it makes perfect sense, and shit goes down because of that, basically. And I love this book so much. It's one of my newfound favorites. I love Margaret Rogerson. I think her depiction of fairies is one of the most unique I've read about, and it's the duality of them putting on the glamour and being these glamorous, in lack of a better word, creatures, and what they really are, and them wanting the craft but also kind of despising the craft because they can't have it. It's just, it's so smart and so beautiful, and I respect the idea of a girl falling in love with pretty much autumn incarnate. I think that's great. I think Margaret Rogerson makes a really interesting distinction between falling in love with the idea of someone and then actually getting to know the actual person and feelings sparking up there. And it's just such a beautiful progression, and I love the characters, and I love the world, and I love the writing, and I'm trash for it. And finally, I listened to the audiobook of Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. This is the second book in the Grisha trilogy, I suppose the original one, the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I can't tell you too much about the plot because it spoils the previous book, but this is a YA series inspired by Tsarist Russia, basically, with elemental magic. And our main character, Alina, is a sun summoner. And that's all I'm saying. I remember liking the book, the first one, well enough in the day when I read it, which was ages ago. But it didn't really connect with it all that much, I don't think. But I absolutely fell in love with the second one. And I then read the third one in October, stay posted. But yeah, I liked the narrator, but half the people had random Russian accents and half didn't, and it didn't make sense because they were from the same place. So I did have, a lot to say about that. But overall, this book was so beautiful. It was much better than the first one. As I said, it just clicked with me. And also you have Nikolai in this book. I love Nikolai so much. So obviously this is, it's so good. It wasn't perfect. I think there was something to be said about the pacing, but it introduced so many characters that I love. And the writing is so beautiful, and I just love Leigh Bardugo so much. So highly recommend that. And that's that. We made it. This is the end of my September wrap-up. It wasn't my best month, but, could be worse. Please do let me know what you've read in the month of September, or what you think I should read in October. I don't know. Tell me your spooky recommendations. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you later.